Earth had watched the Great War in space for many years. Through powerful telescopes and listening devices, humans observed as the Kerethi and Vorlax fought across countless star systems. These two alien races had been enemies for centuries, their massive fleets destroying planets and moons as they battled for control. Commander Park sat in her office at United Defense Force headquarters, scrolling through the newest reports on her tablet. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of air conditioning. Large screens on the wall showed maps of space with red and blue marks indicating the positions of the alien fleets. "Any changes?" asked Major Han, entering with 2 cups of coffee. Park accepted 1 cup gratefully. The Vorlax pushed back the Kerethi in the Rigel sector. 3 planets destroyed in the process. All that destruction. Han shook her head. And for what? Resources, territory, old grudges. Who knows anymore? They'd been fighting so long they probably forgot why they started. Park zoomed in on a section of the map. But look here. The Kerethi 5th Fleet is moving toward the Ta City system. That's closer to us than they've ever come before. For decades, Earth had developed its technology quietly, careful not to broadcast signals that might attract attention from the warring aliens. Humanity built its first interstellar ships, established bases on Mars and Europa, and even colonized Alpha Centauri, all while staying hidden in the shadow of the Great Galactic War. Park had been commander of Earth's defense forces for just 8 months. At 42, she was younger than most expected for the position, but her strategic brilliance had earned her the role. She had dark eyes that missed nothing and short black hair streaked with early gray, a result of the stresses of her job. 3 days later, everything changed. The alert came at 3:17 a.m. Park rushed to the command center, still pulling on her uniform jacket. The main screen showed a burning object streaking through Earth's atmosphere. "It's coming down in Australia," reported Lieutenant Joe. "Trajectory suggests it'll land near Uluru." "Scramble response teams," ordered Park. "I want that site secured before civilians get anywhere near it." Within an hour, Park was aboard a hypersonic transport heading to Australia. The sun was just rising when they landed. Military vehicles surrounded the crash site, where a silver ship about the size of a passenger jet had gouged a trench into the red earth. "Life signs?" Park asked the team leader. 3 confirmed. "They're still inside." Park approached cautiously. The ship's hull glowed faintly with residual heat. A section of the side suddenly split open, and a ramp extended to the ground. 3 tall, slender figures emerged. They had pale blue skin and 4 arms each. Their faces featured large, almond-shaped eyes and small mouths. They wore metallic suits covered with strange symbols. "Kerethi," whispered Park. She recognized them from intercepted transmissions. One of the aliens stepped forward. A device on its chest glowed, and a mechanical voice spoke in halting English. "We require assistance. Ship damaged. Pursuing enemies may follow." Park made a quick decision. "Take them to the secure facility at Pine Gap," she told her team, "and get our best linguists there immediately." Within days, Earth's leaders gathered at an emergency session of the United Nations. The aliens, now identified as scientific scouts from the Kerethi Exploration Division, had been separated from their main fleet during a battle and pursued by Vorlax ships. "They're surprised we've remained undetected," Park explained to the Security Council. "Apparently both sides have been so focused on each other, they never bothered to look carefully at what they considered primitive star systems." "What do they want from us?" asked the Chinese representative. "For now, just repairs for their ship, but they're also curious about us. They've never encountered a species that developed space technology while staying hidden." 2 weeks passed as Earth scientists worked with the Kerethi to repair their ship. During this time, Park spent hours talking with the Kerethi commander, Tickle. Their translation technology improved daily, allowing for better communication. "Your war has lasted centuries," Park said during one conversation. "Has anyone ever tried to end it peacefully?" Tickle made a gesture that seemed equivalent to a sad smile. "Many times, but the hatred runs too deep. Neither side trusts the other enough to begin meaningful talks. What if a neutral third party intervened? Tekkel's large eyes blinked rapidly. You? Your species is unknown to the galactic community. You have no influence, no power. Maybe that's an advantage, suggested Park. We have no history with either side. No bias. The next day, Park presented a bold plan to Earth's leaders. It was risky. Revealing humanity's existence to both warring parties could potentially bring the war to Earth. But continuing to hide while the war expanded might eventually lead to the same result. We've studied their tactics, their weapons, their communication systems, Park explained. And we've developed technologies they might not expect. After heated debate, Earth's nations agreed to attempt the diplomatic intervention. As the Karathi scout ship prepared to depart, Park met with Tekkel one final time. We will send representatives to your high command with our proposal, she said. Will you help arrange this meeting? Tekkel hesitated. I will try. But understand, my people have little reason to listen to an unknown species. Just get us the meeting, Park replied. We'll handle the rest. 3 days later, Park stood before the Karathi ambassador, who had arrived with a small delegation to hear Earth's proposal. The ambassador was older than Tekkel, with paler skin and elaborate markings on his face that Park now understood indicated high rank. The meeting took place in a specially prepared chamber beneath the United Nations building. The walls displayed holographic maps of the galaxy, highlighting the territories controlled by each side in the conflict. You have studied our war, the ambassador observed, his translator device conveying a tone of surprise. For decades, confirmed Park. We've watched, learned, and developed our own understanding of the conflict. And now you believe you can end a war that has consumed galaxies for centuries. The ambassador's tone was dismissive. You're so few, so young. How could you hope to succeed where ancient races have failed? Park smiled, feeling the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders, but also the confidence that came from years of preparation. Because we think differently, she said simply. We see patterns you might have missed. We have no stake in your past conflicts. And sometimes, Ambassador, fresh eyes can see solutions where others see only obstacles. The ambassador studied her for a long moment, then made a gesture with his upper arms that Park had learned indicated reluctant agreement. I will convey your offer to the High Command, he said finally, but I promise nothing. As the Karathi delegation departed, Major Han approached Park. Do you really think they'll listen to us? She asked quietly. Park watched the alien ship rise into the sky, becoming a bright point of light before disappearing. They might not, she admitted, but for the first time in centuries, they're hearing a new voice. Sometimes that's all it takes to break an old pattern. She turned to her team. Prepare the diplomatic vessels. If they're willing to listen, we need to be ready to speak. Across Earth, humanity prepared for its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as peacemakers. The greatest challenge in human history had begun. The room was silent as Dr. Kim adjusted her glasses and looked at the holographic display. The quantum equations floated in the air, beautiful in their complexity. She had been working on the Nexus protocol for 15 years, ever since she first joined the secret government project studying the alien war. Will it work? Commander Park asked, breaking the silence. Dr. Kim nodded. We've incorporated what we've learned from both alien technologies, he continued. Our ships can move quickly, stay hidden, and deploy the Nexus protocol precisely where needed. A young pilot raised her hand. Sir, won't they just destroy us once they detect us? Admiral Choi smiled slightly. That's why we won't attack them. We don't need to destroy their ships. We just need to create confusion long enough to force a dialogue. Remember, we're not joining the war. We're stopping it. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Choi met privately with Commander Park and Dr. Kim. The three leaders represented the core of Earth's response team. The diplomatic channels are open with both sides, Park informed them. The Karathi High Command has agreed to receive our envoys next week. The Vorlax are more hesitant, but they've at least acknowledged our messages. They think we're no threat, Admiral Choi said. They see us as primitive newcomers. Good, Dr. Kim replied. Underestimation gives us an advantage. 3 days later, Earth made its official announcement to both warring factions. The message was broadcast simultaneously to all known Kerethi and Vorlax communication networks. To the leaders of the Kerethi Union and the Vorlax Dominion, we, the United Nations of Earth, formally announce our presence in the galactic community. We have observed your conflict for decades and now offer our services as neutral mediators. We propose an immediate ceasefire and peace talks on neutral ground. The response was exactly as they had predicted. The Kerethi responded first with dismissal. Your species is unknown and untested. This conflict is beyond your understanding. The Vorlax were even more direct. Primitive worlds should not interfere in matters beyond their comprehension. But 3 days later, both sides sent follow-up messages. The dismissal had turned to curiosity. The Kerethi requested information about Earth's history and technological development. The Vorlax wanted to know how humans had remained undetected for so long. And finally, after 2 weeks of exchanges, both sides agreed to send small diplomatic vessels to Earth. Not for peace talks, neither would admit they needed such things, but for cultural exchange and scientific discussion. It's working, Park told her team after receiving confirmation of the diplomatic visits. They're curious enough to talk to us. The night before the diplomatic missions were set to arrive, Dr. Kim worked late in her laboratory. The Nexus protocol was ready, installed on all 30 of Earth's stealth vessels, but she wanted to review the calculations one final time. Still at it, a voice asked from the doorway. Dr. Kim looked up to see Admiral Choi holding 2 cups of tea. She accepted one gratefully. Just making sure, she said. The timing has to be perfect. Admiral Choi nodded. My pilots are ready. Each ship knows exactly where to position itself for maximum effect. Do you think they'll forgive us? Dr. Kim asked suddenly. When they realize what we've done. The Admiral considered the question. I think they'll be too busy being amazed that it worked, and possibly angry that a primitive species outsmarted them. The next morning, diplomatic vessels from both alien civilizations entered Earth's solar system. They were deliberately small ships, showing their low expectations for the meeting. The Kerethi ship landed first in a specially prepared area in Switzerland. 6 tall, blue-skinned delegates emerged, their 4 arms moving gracefully as they surveyed their surroundings. 2 hours later, the Vorlax ship landed. Their delegates were shorter, with green-tinted skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. They moved with quick, bird-like motions. The 2 delegations were kept separate, each meeting with different human representatives. This was deliberately planned. While the diplomats talked on Earth, Admiral Choi's fleet was moving into position. Tell me, Commander Park, said the lead Kerethi diplomat during their meeting, what does Earth hope to gain by inserting itself into our conflict? Peace, Park replied simply. Your war has destroyed thousands of worlds. It threatens to eventually reach our sector. We believe it can end. The Kerethi made a sound that the translators interpreted as laughter. This conflict has defined our civilizations for centuries. It cannot simply end because a new species wishes it. Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, Admiral Choi received the signal. All diplomatic teams were engaged. The alien motherships were waiting at the edge of the solar system. All vessels, move to Phase 2 positions, he ordered quietly. 30 black ships silently accelerated toward predetermined coordinates. They would position themselves at key points between major battle groups of both alien fleets. Back on Earth, Dr. Kim sat in the control center, monitoring the fleet's progress. Each ship carried a portion of the Nexus protocol. When activated simultaneously, they would create a disruption field affecting faster-than-light communications across 1/8 of the galaxy. Ships in position, reported a technician. Dr. Kim took a deep breath. Activate countdown. Nexus protocol initiates in 60 seconds. In Switzerland, Commander Park received a discreet notification. She looked at the Kerethi delegation and said, "There's something I think you should know about humans." "What is that?" asked the lead diplomat. "We don't just talk about peace. We make it happen." At that exact moment, across thousands of light years, 30 human ships activated the Nexus protocol. The quantum disruption spread instantly, following the same pathways that the alien communications used. For the first time in centuries, the commanders of the Kerethi and Vorlax fleets could not communicate with their ships. Orders could not be transmitted. Battle plans could not be coordinated. And in that silence, human voices began broadcasting on all frequencies, in both Kerethi and Vorlax languages. "This is Earth. We offer a path to peace. Your command structures have been temporarily disrupted as a demonstration of our seriousness. No ships have been harmed. We ask only for your attention. The war that has consumed your civilizations can end today." On Earth, the Kerethi diplomat's communication device went silent. He looked at Commander Park with new understanding, and perhaps a hint of respect. "What have you done?" he asked quietly. "We've changed the conversation," Park replied. "Now shall we begin talking about peace?" Commander Park stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Harmony, watching as the holographic display showed the positions of both alien fleets. Red markers represented the Vorlax ships, while blue showed the Kerethi vessels. The two massive forces faced each other across the Orient sector, thousands of warships preparing for what would likely be another devastating battle. "Status report," Park said quietly. Lieutenant Ba looked up from her console. "The Vorlax Supreme Command has responded to our ceasefire request, Commander. They've agreed to a 24-hour pause. And the Kerethi? The same. Their High Council has ordered their fleet to hold position for one Earth day. They're calling it a courtesy to the primitive species." Park nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Behind this calm exterior, her mind was racing through calculations and contingencies. The aliens had fallen perfectly into humanity's plan. They viewed the ceasefire request as a naive gesture from an inexperienced species. They had agreed only because they saw an opportunity to reposition their forces advantageously. "They're underestimating us," said Admiral Choi, who stood beside Park. Though officially her superior, he had come to respect Park's strategic mind and had given her operational command of this mission. "They are," Park agreed, "and that's our greatest advantage." She touched a control panel, and the display zoomed out to show a wider view of the sector. Small green dots represented Earth's ships, tiny compared to the massive alien fleets, but positioned with careful precision at key locations. "All 50 ships are in position," reported Captain Min from the tactical station. "Nexus protocol is ready to activate." Park checked the time. They had prepared for this moment for years, yet now that it had arrived, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. If their plan failed, Earth would be revealed to the galaxy as a threat. Both warring alien civilizations might turn their attention to eliminating the human problem. "Communications, patch me through to all Earth vessels," Park ordered. A young communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Park took a deep breath. "This is Commander Park to all ships. In 15 minutes, we will activate the Nexus protocol simultaneously. Remember your training. When alien vessels lose contact with their command structures, they will be confused and possibly hostile. Maintain your positions, but be prepared to engage defensive measures if necessary. No aggressive actions unless fired upon. Our mission is peace, not combat." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Some showed tension, others determination. All of them understood what was at stake. "For too long, we've watched this war from the shadows. Today, we step into the light not as another combatant, but as the force that will end this conflict. Stand ready." In the science section of the Harmony, Dr. Kim made final adjustments to the Nexus protocol control systems. Her hands moved steadily across the controls despite the pressure of the moment. Will it work across such a large area? Asked her assistant, Dr. Yoon. Dr. Kim nodded. The quantum entanglement effect should cascade through their communication networks. We've positioned our ships to create an overlapping field that will cover both fleets entirely. And their backup systems. Those will be affected too. They rely on the same principles of faster-than-light communication. They might eventually develop a workaround, but by then we'll have their attention. Dr. Yoon finished. Across the fleet, Earth's ships prepared for the moment of truth. These vessels represented humanity's best technology, smaller than alien warships but equipped with advanced stealth systems and the revolutionary Nexus protocol transmitters. Aboard the Peacebringer, Captain Song addressed her nervous crew. Remember, we're not here to fight. We're here to stop a fight. Stay calm when the confusion starts. On the Mediator, Lieutenant Kang ran final checks on the translation systems that would broadcast humanity's message to every alien ship in range. The message had been carefully crafted over months, designed to be clear and direct in both Karathi and Vorlax languages. Commander Park watched as the final minutes ticked away. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this, but training could never fully prepare them for the reality of inserting themselves between two ancient, powerful civilizations locked in bitter conflict. 1 minute to Nexus activation, announced the operations officer. Park opened a secure channel to Earth. Central Command, this is Harmony. We are proceeding with Phase 3. Stand by for outcomes. The voice of the Secretary General came through clearly. Understood, Commander Park. The United Nations Security Council is monitoring. Good luck. 30 seconds, called out Lieutenant Ba. Park took her seat in the command chair. All ships, final confirmation of readiness. One by one, the captains of the 50 Earth vessels reported in. All were in position. All systems were functioning normally. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Park watched the alien fleets on the display, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Some ships were already beginning to move, using the ceasefire to gain tactical advantages. 3, 2, 1. Activate. At precisely the same moment, all 50 Earth ships activated the Nexus protocol. The effect was invisible to the naked eye, but the quantum disruption spread instantly across space, following the pathways that the alien communications networks had established over centuries. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the tactical display began to show changes. Alien ships that had been moving in coordinated formations suddenly slowed or stopped. Some began to drift out of position. It's working, breathed Admiral Choi. Their command networks are down. Begin transmission, Park ordered. Lieutenant Kang activated the prepared message, broadcasting it on all frequencies used by both alien civilizations. Attention all Karathi and Vorlax vessels. This is the United Earth Fleet. We offer a path to peace. Your war is based on miscommunication. Your command networks have been temporarily disrupted to demonstrate our seriousness and create an opportunity for dialogue. No ships have been harmed. We request that all vessels maintain position while your representatives meet with ours to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The message repeated continuously, translated into both alien languages. Response. Park asked. Multiple incoming transmissions, reported the communications officer. Individual alien ships are trying to contact us directly. Their communications with their own command structures are still disrupted. This was expected. Without central command, individual ship captains would need to make their own decisions. Some would be hostile, others curious, many simply confused. Put me through to any ship captain willing to talk, Park ordered. A moment later, the view screen showed the face of a Karathi ship commander. His blue skin looked pale, his large eyes wide with surprise or anger. Human facial expressions didn't translate perfectly to alien features. What have you done? The Karathi demanded. This is an act of war against both our civilizations. No, Park replied calmly. This is an act of peace. If we wanted war, we would have attacked while your communications were down. Instead, we're talking." On another channel, a Vorlax captain appeared. The three-eyed alien seemed more calculating than angry. "Impressive technology for a species we thought primitive," the Vorlax said. "What do you hope to achieve?" "A chance to be heard," Park answered. "Your civilizations have been fighting so long you've forgotten how to listen. We've studied your war for decades. We believe it can end today, if you're willing to hear what we've discovered." For the next hour, chaos reigned across both fleets. Some ships attempted to fire on the nearest Earth vessel, only to find their targeting systems mysteriously malfunctioning. Another aspect of the Nexus protocol that Dr. Kim had engineered. Others maintained position, waiting for orders that wouldn't come. A growing number established direct communication with Earth ships. On the bridge of the Harmony, Commander Park worked tirelessly, speaking with captain after captain from both sides. She didn't try to explain everything. That would come later. For now, the goal was simply to establish contact, to present humanity not as a threat, but as a neutral third party with a fresh perspective. "Commander," called Lieutenant Bai after several hours, "the Karathi flagship is requesting to speak with our highest authority." Park nodded. "Put them through." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Grand Admiral Sektu of the Karathi forces. His elaborate facial markings indicated centuries of service. "Commander Park," he said, his translator conveying a tone of reluctant respect. "Your species has taken a great risk today." "Yes," Park agreed simply. "You have 17 minutes before our systems adapt to your disruption. What do you hope to accomplish in such a short time?" Park met his gaze steadily. "To show you that change is possible. We've communicated more between our three species in the past hour than you and the Vorlax have in centuries. If we can do that in minutes, imagine what's possible with true dialogue." The Karathi admiral was silent for a moment. "The Vorlax cannot be trusted. Perhaps, or perhaps that belief itself is the greatest barrier to peace. Will you agree to meet with both our representatives and theirs? Not for immediate peace, but for the possibility of it." As the Nexus protocol's effects began to fade and communication was restored throughout both fleets, something unexpected happened. Instead of immediately resuming battle positions, most ships held their places. Captains who had spoken directly with humans passed along what they had heard. Questions spread through both fleets. Could the war really be based on miscommunication? Was peace actually possible? Aboard the Harmony, Commander Park received the news she had been hoping for. Both the Karathi Grand Admiral and the Vorlax Supreme Commander had agreed to meet with Earth's representatives. "It worked," Admiral Choi said quietly. "They're listening." "This is just the beginning," Park cautioned. "The hardest part comes next, helping them hear each other after centuries of hatred." But as she looked at the display showing the two massive fleets still holding position, even after communications were restored, she allowed herself a moment of hope. For the first time in hundreds of years, the guns had fallen silent not because of exhaustion or tactical necessity, but because someone had suggested there might be another way. The United Nations headquarters in Geneva had been transformed for this historic meeting. The central chamber now featured three distinct sections, one for the Karathi delegation with their tall, adjustable seats accommodating their four arms, another for the Vorlax representatives with environmental controls set to their preferred higher temperature, and a central area where Earth's diplomats would present their findings. Security was tight. Though both alien races had agreed to come unarmed, tensions remained high. Armed guards from all three species stood at strategic points around the room, watching each other warily. Ambassador Lee smoothed his formal diplomatic jacket and checked his appearance one last time before entering. At 65, he had spent most of his career in traditional Earth diplomacy, never imagining he would one day mediate between alien civilizations. His calm demeanor and measured speaking style had made him the natural choice to lead the human diplomatic team. "Are you ready?" asked Commander Park, who would be observing from a side chamber. Lee nodded. as ready as anyone can be to tell two powerful civilizations they've been killing each other for centuries over a mistake. The doors opened, and Lee entered the chamber with his team. Dr. Kim walked beside him, carrying a secure data tablet containing the evidence they had compiled. Behind them came linguists, historians, and military analysts who had spent years studying the intercepted communications between the warring aliens. The Kerethi delegation had arrived first. 8 tall, blue-skinned aliens sat stiffly on one side of the room. Their leader, Supreme Counselor Zeth, wore elaborate metallic ornaments that clinked softly with each movement of his forearms. The Vorlax entered moments later. Their delegation consisted of 6 members, led by High Commander Vex. The green-skinned, three-eyed aliens moved with quick, precise steps, their gaze constantly shifting between the humans and the Kerethi. "This chamber is now sealed," announced the security chief. "No communications in or out until the meeting concludes." Ambassador Lee stepped to the central podium. "Representatives of the Kerethi Union and the Vorlax Dominion, I thank you for accepting our invitation. Earth welcomes you as equals and as potential friends." The translation devices worn by all attendees converted his words simultaneously. There was a slight delay as the aliens heard the message in their own languages. "Let us be clear," growled High Commander Vex of the Vorlax. "We are here only because your species has demonstrated unexpected technological capabilities. This does not make us friends." Supreme Counselor Zeth of the Kerethi made a gesture with his upper arms that the humans had learned indicated agreement. "For once, I concur with the Vorlax. Your disruption of our communication networks was impressive, but it does not qualify you to mediate our ancient conflict." Ambassador Lee nodded respectfully. "We understand your skepticism. However, we ask only that you listen to what we have discovered. After that, you are free to leave and continue your war if you still believe it necessary." This approach, direct but non-confrontational, had been carefully planned. The aliens needed to feel they maintained control of the situation. "Proceed," said Zeth after a moment. Lee turned to Dr. Kim, who stepped forward with her data tablet. The main display screen in the chamber activated, showing a timeline of the conflict between the two civilizations. "My name is Dr. Kim," she began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I am a quantum physicist by training, but for the past 15 years, I have led a team studying the history of your conflict." She touched her tablet, and the display zoomed in on a particular point in the timeline. 312 years ago, by Earth measurement, your civilizations first made contact in the Proxima Centauri sector. The Kerethi had established mining operations on the 3rd planet. The Vorlax arrived seeking resources as well. Both alien delegations shifted slightly. This was common knowledge to them. "What happened next is where our findings become relevant," Dr. Kim continued. She brought up images of ancient transmissions that Earth had intercepted and archived. "Our analysis of these early communications revealed something remarkable." She highlighted a specific message, the first formal communication from the Kerethi leadership to the Vorlax. This message was intended as a proposal for shared mining rights. The Kerethi were offering to divide the planet's resources equally between both civilizations. The Kerethi Supreme Counselor leaned forward. "Yes, a generous offer that the Vorlax rejected with threats of violence." High Commander Vex's 3 eyes narrowed. "False. It was the Kerethi who demanded we leave the system entirely or face destruction." "And this," said Ambassador Lee, stepping forward again, "is exactly the problem. Neither of you is lying. You both truly believe your version of events, but you have both been wrong for 3 centuries." The room fell silent as Dr. Kim brought up a detailed analysis of the original message and its translation. The key phrase in the Kerethi language was Shar Ektavel, which in its most literal form means equal division among worthy entities. However, when this was processed through the early Vorlax translation matrix, it was interpreted as Shar Ektaval, a subtle difference in pronunciation that completely changed the meaning to submission of lesser beings. Dr. Kim paused to let this sink in, The Vorlax delegates were staring at the screen, their three eyes blinking rapidly. "What Dr. Kim is saying," Ambassador Lee explained, "is that the original peace offering from the Kerethi was mistranslated by the Vorlax systems as a demand for submission. The Vorlax, naturally, responded with outrage." He gestured, and Dr. Kim brought up the Vorlax response to the original message. The Vorlax reply stated that they would never submit to such arrogance. The Kerethi, who had offered peaceful cooperation, interpreted this as a hostile rejection of their generous proposal. For the first time, uncertainty showed on the faces of both alien delegations. The Kerethi Supreme Counselor's four hands gripped the edges of his seat. The Vorlax High Commander had gone very still. From that point forward, Dr. Kim continued, all communications were filtered through the lens of this initial misunderstanding. Each side believed the other had shown aggression first. Your automated translation systems, programmed to interpret messages based on this foundation of mistrust, continue to mistranslate key phrases and intentions. She brought up dozens more examples spanning centuries. Peace overtures interpreted as threats, requests for ceasefire seen as demands for surrender, offers of compromise translated as ultimatums. "You've been fighting for 300 years because of a linguistic misunderstanding," Ambassador Lee told the stunned alien delegations. "Neither side wanted this war, but your automated translation systems perpetuated the error. Your civilizations have been trapped in a cycle of mistranslation and miscommunication that led to endless war." The chamber was completely silent. The human delegation watched as the aliens processed this information. Years of careful analysis had led to this moment, and now everything depended on whether these ancient enemies could accept the truth. Supreme Counselor Zeth was the first to speak. This cannot be correct. Millions have died. Worlds have been destroyed, all because of a translation error." "I understand your disbelief," Lee said gently. "But consider, has either side ever truly understood why the other rejected peace? Has the motivation for this war ever been clear beyond the fact that it has always existed in your lifetimes?" High Commander Vex turned to face the Kerethi leader directly, something that had not happened in the chamber until now. "Is it true?" Vex asked in the Kerethi language, setting aside the translation device. "Was your first message truly an offer of cooperation?" Supreme Counselor Zeth seemed startled to hear a Vorlax speaking his language. "Yes," he replied slowly. "We had no reason to demand submission. We simply wanted to share the resources." A Vorlax linguist moved forward, consulting her own records. "The translation matrices were primitive then. We never recalibrated them because we believed we understood the Kerethi intentions." Her voice trembled. 3 centuries of war based on a single mistranslated phrase. One of the Kerethi historians spoke up. "Our records of the initial contact are incomplete. Much was lost in the early battles. We assumed the Vorlax aggression was motivated by territorial expansion." "As did we of you," replied another Vorlax. Ambassador Lee let them talk, understanding that this moment of direct communication between the two sides, perhaps the first honest exchange in centuries, was more valuable than anything else he could say. As the hours passed, the aliens began to share their own records and analyses. Human linguists helped them identify dozens of critical mistranslations that had occurred over the centuries. Each revelation seemed to lift a weight of hatred and replace it with confusion. Then understanding, and finally the first fragile tendrils of hope. The Kerethi Supreme Counselor eventually rose to his full height, towering over everyone in the room. 300 years, he said quietly. Trillions in resources spent, billions of lives lost, hundreds of worlds rendered uninhabitable. He turned to face the Vorlax delegation. All because we could not understand each other's words. The Vorlax High Commander stood as well. "If this is true, and the evidence suggests it is, then we have been fighting a war that never needed to begin." From the observation chamber, Commander Park watched the scene with a mixture of hope and caution. "They're listening to each other," she said to Admiral Choi, who stood beside her. "After all this time, They're finally hearing what the other side is actually saying. It's just the beginning, Choi cautioned. Centuries of hatred won't disappear in a day. No, Park agreed, but it's a start. Inside the chamber, Ambassador Lee sensed the mood shifting. The rigid hostility that had filled the room when the delegations arrived had given way to something else. Not friendship, not yet, but perhaps the recognition that they had all been victims of the same tragic error. Earth offers its services as neutral translators and mediators, Lee said. We have developed systems that can accurately convey the true meaning and intent of your communications. We have no stake in your past conflicts, only a desire to help build a peaceful future. The alien leaders looked at each other, then back at the human ambassador. We will need time, said the Kerethi Supreme Counselor. This revelation, it changes everything we thought we knew. And yet, added the Vorlax High Commander, if true, it offers a path forward that does not require more bloodshed. For the first time in 3 centuries, the leaders of the warring civilizations reached a genuine agreement. They would extend the ceasefire for 30 days while they verified the humans' findings and considered the implications. As the meeting concluded, Ambassador Lee watched the 2 delegations leave through separate doors, but he noticed something significant. Both sides were already making arrangements to meet again, not through human intermediaries, but directly with each other. Outside the chamber, Dr. Kim let out a long breath. Do you think they'll actually end the war? She asked Lee. The ambassador looked at the door where the aliens had exited. I don't know. But today, for the first time, they're questioning why they're fighting. And that's the beginning of peace. The Grand Hall of Peace had been built in just 30 days. Located in neutral territory on Earth's moon, it stood as a symbol of what could be accomplished when 3 species worked together. The dome-shaped building featured architecture that honored traditions from all 3 civilizations, the sweeping arches favored by the Kerethi, the precise geometric patterns of the Vorlax, and the natural light elements that humans preferred. Commander Park stood near a large window, watching as the final preparations were made for the ceremony. The Earth's blue sphere hung in the black sky, a beautiful backdrop for this historic moment. 5 hours after humans had actively joined the galactic conflict, the provisional peace treaty had been signed. Now, 1 month later, they were gathered to formalize the agreement that would reshape the galaxy. Nervous? Asked Major Han, who approached with 2 cups of coffee. Park accepted one with a grateful smile. A little. Everything has happened so fast. Too fast, some people think, Han replied. There are still those who believe the peace won't last. Park nodded. She had heard the doubts from many quarters. Some human military leaders worried that Earth had exposed itself too quickly to powerful alien civilizations. Some Kerethi and Vorlax commanders remained suspicious, unwilling to believe that centuries of war could end so suddenly. They need time, Park said. 300 years of fighting can't be forgotten in a month. She watched as alien dignitaries began to enter the hall. The Kerethi moved with formal dignity, their blue skin adorned with ceremonial markings for the occasion. The Vorlax delegates seemed more relaxed than Park had ever seen them, their 3 eyes no longer darting suspiciously at everyone around them. Commander Park. She turned to find Supreme Counselor Zeth of the Kerethi approaching. He towered over her, but his posture was respectful. Supreme Counselor. She greeted him with the traditional Kerethi gesture of respect, right arms crossed over left. I wish to speak with you before the ceremony, Zeth said. There are still many among my people who question this peace. They have known nothing but war with the Vorlax for generations. Park nodded. The same is true for many Vorlax. And some humans fear our involvement might eventually bring your conflicts to Earth. They may be right to worry, Zeth admitted. And yet, he looked out at the Earth hanging in space. Your world reminds me of what ours once were, before the war scared them beyond recognition. They can heal, Park said. That's part of the Accord. Joint restoration projects for planets damaged in the war. Zeth made a sound that Park had learned was the Karethi equivalent of a thoughtful sigh. 5 hours, he said. 5 hours from when your ships activated their disruptive technology to when High Commander Vex and I signed the provisional treaty. After 3 centuries of war, peace was achieved in less time than it takes for a Karethi child to complete daily studies. Sometimes the shortest actions have the longest consequences, Park replied. Indeed, I must prepare for the ceremony. Thank you, Commander, for your courage. Not many would have risked standing between 2 warring powers. As Zeth moved away, Park saw Dr. Kim entering with her team of linguists. They had been working around the clock to create new translation systems, ones that would accurately convey the nuances and cultural contexts of all 3 languages. These systems were a key part of the accord, ensuring that the mistranslations that had started the war could never happen again. Dr. Kim spotted Park and came over. The final version is ready, she said, holding up a small device, triple-checked by linguists from all 3 species. It looks so small to have such importance, Park observed. The best solutions often are, Dr. Kim replied. She looked tired but satisfied. When I started studying quantum physics, I never imagined my work would end a galactic war. None of us did, Park agreed. But that's the thing about humans. We adapt. The main doors opened, and Ambassador Lee entered with High Commander Vex of the Vorlax. The 2 appeared deep in conversation, using the new translation devices to communicate directly. Look at that, Major Han whispered. A month ago, they couldn't be in the same room without security between them. The sight gave Park hope. If the leaders could move past centuries of hatred this quickly, perhaps the ordinary citizens would follow. A soft tone announced that the ceremony would begin in 15 minutes. Delegates from all 3 species took their places in the circular chamber. At the center stood a round table with 3 equal sides, another symbolic choice to represent the new balance of power. Admiral Choi approached Park. It's time. The Secretary General wants you on the platform with the other military commanders. Park nodded and followed him. As they walked, Choi spoke quietly. I've served in Earth's forces for 40 years. I've seen conflicts start and end, but nothing like this. Do you think it will last? Park asked. I think it has a better chance than most peace treaties I've seen, Choi replied, because it's based on truth, not exhaustion. The ceremony began with music, a composition created jointly by artists from all 3 worlds. Then the Secretary General of the United Nations stepped forward to welcome everyone. Today marks not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new era of cooperation. 1 month ago, our species were strangers. Today, we take the first steps as friends. The leaders of each civilization spoke in turn. Supreme Counselor Zeth of the Karethi spoke of healing and rebuilding. High Commander Vex of the Vorlax spoke of understanding and progress. The Secretary General spoke of hope and unity. Then together, they signed the Tri-Species Accord. The document was written in all 3 languages, with multiple safeguards to ensure perfect translation. It established trade agreements, cultural exchanges, shared defense protocols, and, most importantly, communication standards to prevent future misunderstandings. As the formal part of the ceremony concluded, Park found herself approached by a young Vorlax officer. Commander Park, the Vorlax said through his translator, I commanded a destroyer in the Rigel sector. When your ships activated your technology, I lost contact with my superiors for the first time in my career. Park tensed slightly, unsure where this conversation was heading. I was taught that without clear orders, a ship was nothing, the Vorlax continued. But in those 17 minutes, I made my own decisions. I chose not to fire on the Karethi vessels nearby, even though I had the opportunity. And they chose not to fire on me. He blinked his 3 eyes slowly. Perhaps sometimes, losing communication helps us find our own wisdom. The insight struck Park deeply. Sometimes the most important conversations happened in silence. The reception that followed was unlike anything Park had imagined. Karethi, Vorlax, and humans mingled freely. Scientists discussed joint research projects. Military officers exchanged stories of battles now relegated to history. Diplomats planned cultural exchanges between worlds that had only known each other through weapons fire. Standing at the edge of the gathering, Park found herself joined by her aide, Lieutenant Ba. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Ba commented. Park nodded. "We're witnessing history. The news networks are calling it a miracle," Ba said. "Some are saying this proves humans are the most peaceful species in the galaxy." Park smiled slightly. "I don't think that's true. We've had plenty of our own wars. Then why did we succeed where they failed for centuries?" Park considered the question as she watched the three species interacting. "Perhaps because we're not the strongest or the most advanced," she told her aide. "But we might be the most stubborn when it comes to finding solutions instead of continuing fights. We haven't had the luxury of overwhelming power, so we've had to think more creatively." Across the room, Dr. Kim was showing a group of alien scientists her original notes on the Nexus protocol. Ambassador Lee was deep in conversation with representatives from newly peaceful worlds, discussing reconstruction efforts. Admiral Choi was comparing ship designs with commanders from both alien fleets. "What happens next?" Ba asked. "Everything," Park replied. "Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. The Accord opens up the galaxy to humanity, and us to them. We'll learn from each other, grow together." Later that evening, as the Earth rose over the lunar landscape outside the window, Park stood alone for a moment of quiet reflection. The war that had raged for centuries had ended mere hours after humans joined, not as a powerful military force, but as unexpected mediators who could see what the combatants could not. She thought about how small changes sometimes created the biggest effects. A single mistranslated phrase had launched centuries of war. A simple disruption of communications had created the space for peace. The universe, it seemed, often turned on such small hinges. A message alert sounded on her communication device. New reports were coming in from across former battle zones. The ceasefire was holding everywhere. Former enemies were cautiously beginning joint operations to clear space debris and rescue stranded ships. Park smiled. The path ahead would not be easy. Old hatreds would not disappear overnight. Mistakes would be made. New challenges would arise. But today, at least 3 species had chosen a different way forward. "Commander," Major Han called from the doorway. "The transport back to Earth is preparing for departure." Park took one last look at the scene of former enemies talking peacefully under Earth's light. "Coming," she said, and turned toward home, knowing that the galaxy would never be the same.